October 16th, cruising at 36,000 feet above Utah, a United Airlines Boeing 737 was struck by a sudden explosion of glass. An object slammed into the cockpit windshield, injuring the captain and turning a routine morning into viral chaos. The words "mystery object" echoed across headlines and social media. No birds fly this high. At that altitude, the impact raises immediate questions. What can reach 36,000 feet? Theories spiral from space debris to a stray meteor to a rogue machine. Online sleuths and newsrooms race to explain the impossible. But the real answer uncovered here reveals a dangerous new frontier in the battle for our skies, and its implications reach far beyond a single mystery object. What really tore through that reinforced glass? The cockpit snaps into urgent action. At 6:43 in the morning, the United Airlines 737, carrying 112 people, is struck by an object at 36,000 feet near Moab, Utah. The forward windshield on the first officer's side shatters with a deafening bang. Glass sprays across the controls. The captain's right arm is cut. Blood begins to drip, but his grip on the situation holds. The crew immediately transmits a mayday to air traffic control. The captain's voice, steady despite pain, reports a windshield breach and requests an emergency descent. Controllers on the ground clear a direct path to Salt Lake City. The first officer manages the plane's descent, following checklists as the cabin crew is alerted. In the cabin, passengers sense the shift as the jet banks and drops altitude. The flight deck maintains constant contact with air traffic control, confirming the number of souls on board and the extent of injuries. Within minutes, the flight is rerouted and ground emergency teams are notified. The crew's training takes over, transforming chaos into a tightly controlled emergency response as the jet races toward the safety of Salt Lake City. At 36,000 feet above Utah, the sky is supposed to be empty. No birds, no hail, nothing but thin air and sunlight. The Boeing 737's shattered windshield, cracked in a spiderweb pattern, instantly became an online sensation. Photos snapped by crew and leaked within hours were everywhere. Blood smeared on the captain's arm. Shards of glass scattered across the controls. The images fueled a surge of speculation. News headlines called it a mystery object, and social media exploded with theories. Was it a meteor, space junk, some secret military drone? Aviation forums pointed out that birds cannot reach half that height. FAA data shows bird strikes above 30,000 feet are almost unheard of, and yet here was a jet, wounded at cruising altitude. Hashtags trended. Amateur sleuths zoomed in on scorch marks and crack patterns, each detail sparking new rumors. The incident's rarity, paired with the violent visuals, turned a technical emergency into a viral riddle, with the world demanding answers to what could possibly have struck a passenger jet in the loneliest stretch of the sky. Inside the cockpit, discipline takes over. The captain, his right arm freshly cut by flying glass, wraps a cloth around the wound with one hand, while the other stays on the controls. His voice, measured and calm, runs through the emergency checklist with the first officer. Each command is crisp, every response clear. The first officer reads the descent protocol, confirms the cabin pressure status, and adjusts the autopilot for a rapid but controlled descent. Blood seeps through the captain's makeshift bandage, but his focus never wavers from the instruments. Behind the locked cockpit door, The cabin crew springs into action. Flight attendants secure service carts, check seat belts, and move quickly down the aisle, their faces composed. They signal to each other in practiced gestures, relaying updates from the flight deck. One attendant reassures a passenger whose hands are shaking. Another quietly scans the overhead bins, making sure nothing will become a projectile as the aircraft begins its descent. Back in the cockpit, the captain's hand trembles, only when he wipes away blood. He keeps his voice steady for air traffic control, relaying the aircraft status and confirming the safe altitude for descent. The first officer monitors the pressurization gauges, ready to respond if the inner windshield shows any sign of compromise. Even as an unfamiliar emergency unfolds, the crew's training holds the chaos at bay. They move through each step of the checklist, turning a sudden crisis into a sequence of deliberate, practiced actions. That discipline, forged in countless hours of simulation, transforms a moment of shock into a path toward safety. A Boeing 737's windshield is not just a sheet of glass. It is a complex, multi-layered barrier engineered for survival at 36,000 feet. The outermost pane, made from thermally tempered glass, bears the brunt of the elements and impact threats. Beneath it, a vinyl inner layer and a second, thicker glass pane work together to preserve cabin integrity. The Federal Aviation Administration requires that this assembly withstand a 4-pound bird strike at jet speeds without breaking through. To fight off the cold at altitude and prevent fogging, fine heating wires are embedded within the layers, nearly invisible but essential for keeping the windshield clear and strong. When the United Airlines cockpit was struck, only the outer pane failed, and that failure was by design. The inner layers absorbed the shock, holding pressure and keeping the atmosphere outside where it belonged. Even as cracks radiated in a spiderweb pattern across the outer surface, the core of the windshield acted as a shield. Instruments and flight controls remained protected from the full force of the impact. The difference between a shattered outer pane and a total breach is the difference between a controlled descent and disaster. Every bolt, every layer, every specification in that windshield exists to turn a sudden violent strike into a survivable event. That design makes forensic analysis possible, preserving evidence on the surface while keeping the cabin safe for those inside. It is a feat of engineering that helped the crew bring the aircraft down safely and gave investigators the clues they needed. Inside the NTSB's materials laboratory in Washington, D.C., the damaged windshield from United 1093 arrives under seal. Technicians document every step, serial numbers, handoff times, and the precise condition of the glass. The lab's first task is a detailed surface scan. Under high magnification, the outer pane reveals a complex network of cracks, radiating from a single, slightly abraded point. Embedded within the fracture lines, analysts spot microscopic flecks, clear, colorless, and unlike any residue from typical bird strikes or aircraft debris. Samples are carefully extracted and subjected to electron microscopy. The results point to synthetic polymers, a match for the thin plastic film used in high-altitude research balloons. No trace of paint, metal, or silica, typical of space debris or meteorites, is found. The fracture pattern itself draws attention. A broad, spider-webbed shatter with no puncture or sharp entry wound, consistent with a low-density, flexible object striking at high speed. Meanwhile, a second team assembles radar and telemetry records. United 1093's flight path, altitude, and precise timing are plotted against all known objects in the airspace. Windborne Systems, a technology company specializing in research balloons, provides their last telemetry report, time-stamped just minutes before the impact, at nearly the same altitude and over the same stretch of Utah sky. FAA radar confirms no other aircraft or debris in the vicinity. The balloon's projected trajectory based on wind and drift models intersects the jet's path within a margin of less than a mile at the exact moment of the collision. With physical residue from the windshield and flight data from radar overlays, investigators begin to see a consistent narrative. The evidence rules out birds, drones, and meteors. The only object matching both the material signature and the flight path is a high-altitude balloon, its presence confirmed by both lab analysis and radar vectors. Each piece, polymer residue, fracture mapping, and positional data, locks into place, narrowing the field to a single named suspect. Windborne Systems launch records pinpoint the start of the balloon's journey. On October 15th at 11:29 a.m. in Spokane, Washington, the company filed a notice to airmen with the Federal Aviation Administration to alert airspace users to the experimental flight. Over the next 18 hours, the balloon drifted south and east, crossing state lines and climbing to stratospheric heights. Telemetry packets flowed steadily back to Windborne Systems Operations Center, each one logging altitude, speed, and position. On October 16th at 6:36 a.m., the final burst of data placed the balloon at 35,936 feet above Utah, just 7 minutes before the United jet reported its impact near Moab. National Transportation Safety Board investigators matched the balloon's last known coordinates and drift vector with the airliner's flight path. The collision occurred at 6:43 a.m., almost precisely where the balloon's trajectory ended. There were no other radar targets, no evidence of space debris, and no weather phenomena in the vicinity. Windborne Systems' technical team confirmed that after the last signal, the balloon's position was no longer visible to their trackers or to air traffic controllers. The notice to airmen had covered the launch and the initial monitored flight, but its expiration overlapped with the loss of telemetry, leaving a short window when the balloon's presence went untracked. A spokesperson for the National Transportation Safety Board said that telemetry and radar analysis combined with the physical evidence from the windshield confirms the object was a Windborne Systems research balloon. With that identification, the mystery object gained a name and a launch site. The final pieces fit together. A research balloon launched with proper notice, tracked across the country, then lost to a momentary gap in communication, just long enough for a passenger jet to cross its path at 36,000 feet. The search for answers ended not with an exotic threat, but with a lapse in real-time tracking and a collision that was both extraordinary and, in hindsight, entirely explainable. Windborne Systems issued a public statement within hours of the NTSB identification. The company acknowledged that its high-altitude research balloon, launched from Spokane the previous day, had gone untracked for several minutes before the collision. The company called the event a rare and deeply concerning intersection of technology and commercial aviation. They confirmed the balloon's telemetry had been lost at 6:36 a.m., just 7 minutes before United 1093 crossed the same airspace at 36,000 feet. According to Winborne, all pre-launch notifications and FAA filings had been completed. But the sudden loss of contact left the balloon's final position unmonitored at the critical moment. On the ground in Salt Lake City, emergency medical teams met the aircraft as it taxied to a remote stand. Paramedics treated the captain's arm and hand for multiple superficial lacerations caused by flying glass. Passengers who had braced for the worst after hearing the cockpit announcement remained calm as they disembarked and gathered in the terminal. United Airlines staff began rebooking flights, offering food vouchers and updates while maintenance crews assessed the damage. Winborne's internal review began immediately. Engineering leads pored over the last available telemetry packets, searching for clues to the loss of signal. The company's press release outlined corrective steps, including reducing the allowable time balloons may remain at commercial cruise altitudes, implementing automated alerts to air traffic control when tracking is lost, and developing software to terminate flights remotely if contact cannot be restored. Future balloons, the company said, would carry lighter payloads and include redundant tracking systems. These safeguards were already in development and would be fast-tracked and made mandatory for all launches moving forward. For passengers, the day's ordeal ended with a long wait in Salt Lake City but no further injuries. Airline representatives arranged hotel rooms for those stranded overnight. The captain, after receiving stitches, was debriefed by NTSB investigators before being released from the airport clinic. The flight crew's professionalism drew praise from both United and federal officials, who cited calm under pressure as a decisive factor in the safe outcome. As the investigation continued, the focus shifted from the shock of the incident to the practical challenge of preventing another balloon from slipping off the radar in the crowded skies above America. The case raises hard questions about tracking standards, coordination with air traffic control, and how emerging aerospace technologies share commercial airspace. Winborne announced changes. Regulators signaled reviews. Operators across the industry began reassessing risk. The collision over Utah exposed a gap in the rules meant to keep the skies safe. Just 7 minutes before the United jet's windshield shattered, Winborne Systems lost contact with their high-altitude research balloon. The company had filed a NOTAM, a Notice to Air Missions, before launch as required. That notice covered the balloon's expected flight and initial tracking, but it expired the afternoon before the incident. When telemetry dropped at 6:36 in the morning and the collision followed at 6:43 in the morning, there was no real-time alert to air traffic controllers or pilots. In those 7 minutes, the balloon became invisible to the systems meant to prevent exactly this kind of accident. The Federal Aviation Administration quickly assembled a review team. Policy analysts combed through the incident, comparing it to recent headline cases. The Chinese surveillance balloon that crossed North America in February 2023 had forced the military and the FAA to rethink their protocols for high-altitude objects. But that event happened at nearly twice the altitude and was tracked by defense radar from start to finish. Google's Project Loon, which flew internet balloons for years, had operated under strict FAA coordination, with constant NOTAMs, automated alerts, and direct communication with air traffic control. Loon's compliance became the gold standard for integrating experimental balloons into crowded airspace. In contrast, Windborne's system relied on a single stream of telemetry and a NOTAM that expired before the flight ended, technically compliant, but vulnerable to a brief loss of contact. The FAA's review highlighted the risks. The Wildlife Strike Database shows that object strikes at 36,000 feet are almost unheard of. Most recorded balloon or bird incidents happen below 10,000 feet. Yet the United case proved that rare does not mean impossible. Analysts pointed out that even a short tracking gap, combined with an expired NOTAM, could leave a commercial jet exposed at cruise altitude with no warning. Internal memos called for new requirements, extending NOTAM coverage until objects are confirmed, landed, or destroyed, mandating redundant tracking systems, and automating alerts to air traffic control whenever telemetry is lost. The agency opened a rulemaking docket, seeking public comment and expert input on how to close the loopholes exposed by the Utah incident. For policymakers, the lesson was clear. As high-altitude balloons, drones, and experimental aircraft fill the upper airspace, yesterday's rules are no longer enough. Each precedent, from the Chinese balloon to Project Loon, offered a different model for how to track, notify, and coordinate. The United Windshield strike became the case study for why those lessons matter, and why the future of safe flight depends on closing the gaps before the next mystery object appears in a pilot's windshield. Today, thousands of experimental balloons and drones share airspace with commercial jets. The FAA logged more than 1,900 near misses involving unmanned objects in the skies over the United States last year alone. As innovation pushes higher, so do the risks and the need for real-time accountability. The sky isn't as empty or as controlled as we imagine. For every passenger, that reality is now part of every flight. What would make you feel safe up there?